Now, there are a lot of good quarterback prospects in the 2023 NFL Draft. It is very top-heavy, with essentially 4 top guys and one that's kind of right outside. And that leaves those guys that won't go day one of the draft. And there is one specifically that I believe is the best of that group. And he has been wildly underrated throughout the entire pre-draft process, and that is Jake Haener. He was great at Fresno State and has a good veteran presence. Now, his physical tools are not anything crazy, and that is probably why he's been looked over. But his football IQ and knowledge could make him very dangerous in the NFL, whether if that's a backup or if he can develop into a true starting quarterback. Jake Haener was a 3-star recruit and a consensus top 30 quarterback in the 2017 class. Haener was an Elite 11 finalist, and he passed for 8,400 yards and a school record 90 touchdowns in his time at Monte Vista High School, just outside of San Jose. Haener decided to commit to his dream school, Washington, which was actually his mom's alma mater. He redshirted as a true freshman in 2017 before playing in 4 games as a backup the following season. He completed 9 passes for 107 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Haener decided to transfer to Fresno State after the year, and he had to sit out 1 season due to NCAA rules. In that 2020 shortened season, because of COVID, Haener started all 6 games and passed for a Mountain West best 337 yards per game. Now, he truly did finally break out the following season in 2021. He joined David and Derek Carr as the only quarterbacks in Fresno State history to pass for 4,000 yards in a season. The Bulldogs went 10-3 as Haener passed for 33 touchdowns, the biggest coming with 15 seconds left to beat number 13 UCLA. That same game, Haener threw a career best 455 yards. He opted to use his COVID year to return for 2022. He actually entered the transfer portal after head coach Kalen DeBoer was hired at Washington, but ultimately Haener decided to stay put. He ended up missing 4 games due to injury, but in his 10 starts, Haener passed for 2,900 yards and 29 touchdowns. The Bulldogs went on to win the Mountain West and win the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. Haener was named first team All-Mountain West and was later voted Senior Bowl MVP. See, Jake Haener is a bit of an undersized guy at quarterback at about 6 foot, 200-ish pounds, and that might limit him to a degree. He does play very recklessly, and that will probably make him prone to getting hit, and that can add up over time. Size could be an issue, but he did show a lot of promise when he was playing in his time as a 3-year starter. Haener was super tough, and while he is probably expected to be a backup at the next level, he has some veteran energy, and his game is going to kind of have to be built on him making plays and being somewhat reckless in the same way of Taylor Heineke when he was in Washington. Haener has to play like he has nothing to lose. He can take hits, and he can stand there in pressure and deliver if he needs to. He's good under pressure. Haener isn't exactly a crazy mobile guy that's going to break away. He's really late to move outside the pocket, and he doesn't really have that full athleticism to, at least in the pro level. He would rather just stand in the pocket and try to make the throw, which could be viewed as a good thing or a bad thing. Haener can make the throws though, and that's when he gets to show off his ability to make difficult passes. He has good anticipation, and he's not afraid to pull the trigger. Haener does a good job of playing leverage to put the ball away from the defender, whether that's high or low, and he makes smart plays, but his arm is nothing special. It's very average. Both the accuracy and strength of his arm is merely average. He has a strong enough arm for the NFL, but when he has to put all his velocity into it, he loses some of his accuracy and touch. And in terms of physical tools, Jake Haener appears as nothing more than an average at best prospect, but his decision-making and knowledge is what makes him so valuable. And reportedly on the S2 cognition test, Haener actually scored in the 97th percentile. For context, that's the same score that Joe Burrow had coming out of LSU. Now, let's be real here. Jake Haener isn't going in the first round. I do think there is somewhat of a chance he could go into the third, but that's about as high as possible. I think his value is somewhere in that 3rd to 5th round, but his draft stock is kind of all over the place, so who is a potential fit for Jake Haener? Well, he took top 30 visits with 3 different teams: the Browns, Lions, and Saints. Cleveland is very much tied up with that Deshaun Watson contract, but they may want an upgraded backup from Josh Dobbs, especially with that upside that Haener can bring. Plus, it's really a wonder of how much faith the Browns do have in Deshaun. The Lions have Jared Goff, but there is certainly a want of an upgrade, and if Haener could turn into a real NFL starter, that'd be a huge boost for Detroit. And with Nate Sudfeld as their backup, I mean, he is nothing more than a backup. Finally, he met with the Saints, which is a little interesting. I don't think they really need much of a quarterback. Jameis Winston is still there, and he'll likely be the backup to Derek Carr, who just cashed in, but maybe New Orleans just likes Haener. Now, there were 2 teams that came out to Jake Haener and did a private workout with him on campus: the Jets and the Raiders. New York makes some sense. They have 4 quarterbacks on the roster, but if you can make the argument that Zach Wilson is your second best, that could be a problem. The Jets did just trade for Aaron Rodgers, but who knows how long he'll really play in New York. And the Jets probably want a backup that isn't Zach Wilson. Now, the Raiders are my favorite spot of the teams that Haener did meet with. They signed Jimmy Garoppolo, but that's clearly not the long-term option. The 49ers wanted to move on from him for a reason. Las Vegas did sign Brian Hoyer to back him up, but he's just a vet. The Raiders would love to have a guy turn into a starting caliber quarterback because he'd be needed. I think there are some other teams that could make a lot of sense for a guy like Jake Haener. One of the ones that sticks out to me is the Rams. You have that veteran in Matthew Stafford, but you don't know what his health is really going to look like, and you could use a form of a lottery ticket on Jake Haener to see if you can actually luck into another starting quarterback. So I think that's personally a spot I'd like to see. I am a big fan of Haener as a prospect, and that's really just come from watching him on film recently. Admittedly, I don't watch a lot of Mountain West football, so he was really a guy not really on my radar until this offseason, and just seeing his name pop up here and there, but he is great. He isn't one of the top guys in the draft, and that is evident. Bryce Young is that dude at the top, and Will Levis, CJ Stroud, and Anthony Richardson make up the rest of those guys. But crazy enough, I think I like Jake Haener a little bit more than Hendon Hooker. I actually think they're right there in that same spot. Now, Hooker is a lot more accurate, but Haener appears to have a much higher IQ, but ultimately, both are guys who don't have crazy athletic tools. That being said, there are a lot of players in the league that have made a career despite not having insane physical talent, and one of the ones that keeps getting thrown out is Drew Brees. An anonymous NFL executive actually said that Haener has a little bit of Drew Brees in him, and I could see it. Nothing crazy, but he doesn't have that great arm, but the release is great, and he knows exactly where he's going with the ball. He can outsmart you even if he isn't more athletic. He draws some similarities to Brock Purdy, who came out of nowhere and had a pretty good rookie season. Again, no crazy measurables, but he's super smart. And at the end of the day, if you're looking for the next Brock Purdy or a sleeper quarterback at this year's draft, look no further than Jake Haener.